This month's Portland Amateur Radio Club presentation is called Parachute Mobile, Past, Present, and Future. And it's going to be presented by Rob Fenn, KC6 TYD. And I asked Rob to present to us a few months ago now, I think, Rob. And you've been so kind and gracious to, create a presentation and join us over Zoom from, I believe, California. Is that right, Rob?
That's correct.
Cool. So, and Rob, as I understand it, you have been involved with the club for at least 10 years. You started out as an EMT for the club, the Parachute Mobile.
Actually, it actually now is officially 11 years last September.
Nice. That's awesome.
So my normal job is a paramedic, but this is, I don't know, maybe my midlife crisis adventure. I don't know.
And in 2011, you got your diving or your skydiving certification, and now you're making your own jumps.
Started, as you'll see in the presentation, I was part of the ground crew, and then the two main skydivers that put this all together, as you'll see, got me interested, and I found out that you too can skydive. So I took the courses and was just at the jump zone yesterday, as a matter of fact. So,
oh, that's awesome.
It's fun.
All right, I'm gonna hand over the presentation to you. Give me just a second to allow you guys to share, allow you to share. And you should be set. So you should be able to start your presentation.
Yeah, okay, before I share the screen. Hi, everybody, thanks for joining in. I see we got 26 people plus whoever's on the radio. I see that this is being recorded. Is that right, Max?
Yes.
Zoom? Okay.
Yep.
So I don't have the nifty little flyer to post on a server somewhere. So if anybody needs this presentation, it's on through the recording somehow. But anyway, thank you for inviting us. I think, Max, you saw us at Pacificon. Was that it?
I did.
Is that the connection? Someone.
Yeah, we weren't able to actually watch the jump because we went to KPH on the beach. That was one of our plans, to go visit the old commercial radio site. But I've heard about Parachute Mobile for a couple of years now at Pacificon, and that's kind of the connection, and that's why I wanted to know more about Parachute Mobile, since it was so well known at Pacificon.
Okay. Well, I'll just give you a quick little overview if someone's not quite. Unique combination of ham and skydiving. And that is the teaser, and I'll show you what we've done for 11 years and what we hope to do maybe in the future. So let me share the screen here. Oh, by the way, Fred's over there. He already introduced himself, and thanks, Fred, for showing up. I will be picking on you in a bit, so stand by for that. All right, let me make sure that there we go. Now you guys see that okay?
Yep.
Okay, just want to make sure, and let me shrink down my little group window here so that's out of the way. Okay, just so you folks know, twice already this morning my computer froze up and then kind of rebooted into Zoom. So if I all of a sudden go into the abyss, give me a second, it should come back. I've got a few videos. Hopefully they're not glitchy tonight. So I had a presentation on this last Thursday and it went well, so I'm crossing my fingers. All right. In the air, on the air. That was our little catchphrase for many, many years, because that really tells the story. We start, as Max kind of alluded to there, we started in September 19, 2009, and we've completed 37 missions. And what a mission is to us is a day that we go out and do our event. It's not an individual jump. And so we've had 37 of them. Now we would have had 38 plus for this year, but missions for this year, which is about 3 to 4. Yeah, 11 years. Ta-da. So what is Parachute Mobile? Well, this guy right here, Mark Metzer, AF6IM, he's been skydiving now for over 50 years. He is a greatest storyteller. He's told us stories when he was 18, and he finally was eligible to actually skydive because that's the age limit. And he picked up military conical shape, would jump these, and he would tell us stories about, man, if I did that these days, I wouldn't touch them because I'd be too concerned about the safety of the gear. But he was desperate to get in the air, and they worked, obviously, because he was around here to get me recruited in. And it's come a long way. Back on those conical parachutes, you have to learn your PLF, parachute landing fall, because as he puts it, they're bone-jarring landings. Nowadays, we can kind of tiptoe land if the winds are right, so it's very nice. But anyway, Mark is a ham, and one day on the radio, he was talking to another ham and says, I want to make a high altitude, high open way up there. And so what he did is this guy over here, he recruited Michael Gregg, KF6WRW. He's a skydiver and a ham, and said, hey, let's do this. And let's see if we can make this work. So what he did is he recruited some ground crew, and that's where I came in. Our missions were meant to be practice days preparing for this HF jump. Surprisingly, our missions became popular and a niche was unexpectedly born, which is a good thing because the hey-ho jump would be a huge cost and a obtain that goal, because it's just, you only get a one-time shot, and with all that's involved, and of course the cost at the time, it's been a few years, is like $700 for one jump, but it's a whole weekend deal. We'll just stick to our practice sessions. We're enjoying those. So we have now focused on using the unique platform of skydiving to see what cool amateur related stuff we can come up with. Whoops, sorry about that. We kind of fall into this category, or at least I like to think we do. I'm sure you're all familiar with these logos. Summits on the air, national parks on the air. Everything's on the air these days. Well, we're skydivers in the air. We kind of call ourselves a vertical de-expedition. How about that? And it only lasts about 15 minutes a jump. So there's been some other skydivers involved with us. Troy Bigelow there, W7BIG. He came on board the 2017 and did 4 missions with us, but then he retired and then moved to Washington. He's a retired air traffic controller. It was great to have him on board because we were allowed to have up to 4 jumpers at one time. And as Mask was pointing out, I should say non-radio jumps with the group were back in 2014. And then I started doing my own QSO jumps there on mission 22 in 2015. And now it's just down to Mark and I, because Michael Gregg is doing his own things for the last few years. And we're looking for skydiver hams. So if you're, in the Bay Area, down here in San Francisco Bay Area, and you skydive, let me know. We'll hook you up. All right, so all we do is jump out of a perfectly good airplane consists of a progressive state of readiness from the time the skydiver dons his gear to after landing. It's kind of like how NASA runs their missions. If you've ever like watched the old shuttle takeoffs or anything out there, they have people that are in charge of every little element, and every little position is involved both before, during, and after the NASA missions. And we kind of set up our whole logistics in that standpoint because we want everybody to be ready to go when we're ready to go. And if there's someone having an issue, then they can say, no, we're not ready to go. Because it's all about safety, which I point out right here. You have to understand that I'm sure I don't have to convince any of you that skydiving is an inherent risky sport. And we have to make sure that that element stays true, that we, it does stay true to the risky sport, but the safety issues of it. And then when you incorporate the ham radio equipment, we want to make sure that there's no distraction that can get involved in the parachute process, or any entanglement or snag hazards that could occur as well. So on this safety card that you're seeing here, we have a few of them that depend on the jumper and the payload that we're jumping with. On one side is the parachute gear, and on the flip side is the amateur gear, and as you'll see, those are checklists. And we have our ground crew, after we do all the jumper prep and get them ready to rock and roll, we go through this safety check every time before they get on the plane. I should point out, folks, that when we go out to a drop zone, the drop zone is regular operating business. It's not just for us. So there's other skydivers, there's other customers that are coming. And the drop zone has been so nice over the years to allow us to come in 4 times a year and take up their space, but we still have to follow their rules. Sorry about that, and get in line with everybody else. So when we skydive, we have these positions similar to like how NASA has critical positions like Capcom, video, all kinds of like different elements that run a mission. Well, we have different people that run different positions on the ground. Depending on how many people with, sometimes they'll wear multiple hats. The first of which there is our TAC ops and jumper prep. We then have comms and weather monitoring. A lot of people aren't in radio range, but since we do a lot of streaming video, what we do is we update our media, and then we have a daily log on the website to keep everybody briefed onto when the jumps are coming up. So we have someone that needs to be on top of that. Of course, as I said, we have someone that's in charge of handling our video streaming. APRS, Elko Lincoln All-Star. And for QSL cards and just for archiving our event, we always have someone with a camera trying to get some photography because we get so busy, I forget to take pictures. And it's like, I need someone that just does pictures. So let's look at a couple of these examples. This is our TAC ops or jumper prep. So just as an astronaut, special room where he would have a whole group of people getting them all set up. We do the same thing. It's not as easy as just holding an HT with the type of gear we have and then getting on the plane. We have quite an elaborate radio vest setup, which I'll go to later in the presentation. And it takes some of our ground crew or our jumper prep folks to get the jumper set up. Some of the wires and cabling goes under their jumpsuit. Some of the stuff is on the outside. And then there's a lot of using gaffer's tape to take things down, hold it in place because we don't want it to get in the way of other things. As you can see in that patio down the bottom left, that's the outside of the hangar of the drop zone. And we take up probably almost a quarter of it every time. A couple tables back in the beginning, but now we've turned, we have everything out there. Keep in mind that the drop zone, Delta area, the Stockton, Tracy area of California, we're in a little rural area that, gosh, I think the closest town is Brentwood that actually has anything worthwhile to purchase, and that's probably about 20. So we learned really quick that, you know what, if you need a soldering iron, you better bring it. If you need connectors, batteries, you name it, you think you're going to need something for the setup, you got to bring it. And you can see in that bottom picture there, there's two big, where my cursor is, these kind of stage crates, one there and one over there. And I packed those things full of all kinds of equipment plus extra for the jumper prep portion. All the other video stuff you see here, I'll show you, and that's someone else bringing. Our comms is just isolated to this Go box I made years ago. Our comms aren't like your typical ham event. We're not stationed at a checkpoint, and we're not monitoring bicyclists coming by. The only person that we're pretty much talking to is either the jumper or our parachute control, or what is equivalent as our net control, which is in a separate location. We do create a large antenna farm. Some of it is redundancy because as you saw in that picture, the comms is on one frequency, but we also have some other telemetry at another post or another position that's using the same frequency, so they have their own antenna. When we first started with this project, we had antennas on tripods on the ground, but it got in the way of the parking lot and where people are walking, so it was causing a trip hazard. So then we put the antennas up on that roof using some star pattern to kind of give it a base, and then put some ballast on it. But sometimes the winds pick up there and it was still tipping over. Now, let me back up. Those antennas, if you're not familiar, are the fiberglass Edfong J-pole antennas. They've worked out really well for us, and they're so light and easy. Now, as you can see, I came up with a new way to mount those antennas. That little H pattern mount that's on the gutter, I just kind of that up one day, and well, here I'll show you, because if anybody has this issue where they just like to throw up a mount for an antenna on a gutter, that's all it is. It's just some PVC. You just kind of tinker toy them together. If you look on the right upper picture, it's nothing but a little truck hitch that actually connects into the gutter. This center pole right here of PVC is where I mount the antenna, and I leave that piece loose. It's not loose. That way it'll kind of pivot the antenna so it's vertical. I use this jaw clamp that just rolled into your picture there. That jaw clamp you've seen in some of the trade magazines. I forget which company sells them. I think they're about 30 bucks or something. It's made to clamp onto a pole, and that's pretty much what it's doing here. That PVC, it has a little screw there. You tighten up the jaw. What I did is I just kind of modified a U-bolt for that J-pole PVC, and voila, I just screw the jaw right onto that pole and then throw it up on the gutter, and it just takes like 30 seconds maybe. And then just put your coax cable on there. And here's another example of that jaw mount. That's actually just that's a dolly handle, I think I was using an example. So if you live in a condo or an apartment and you have a banister, you can pretty much use that jaw clamp to attach to anything just to get your antenna up for a bit, and then you can remove it later. So this gentleman here down on the bottom left, he's also here on the top, I'm sorry, the bottom right, top left. That's Michael Wright. Now I should stop here real quick and then to say, you know what? Everything was streaming video and stuff, and maybe he originally started with like one point of view camera, and it's turned out to be 4, as you can see right here on this right upper screen. That's air to ground camera that we have actually attached to the jumper. That LZ camera is a remote camera out in the drop zone, so when we land, it gives you a point of view from that. We have a PTZ rooftop camera, that's pan tilt zoom. And if you look right below that monitor, you'll see this little pad with a joystick. And an operator can just move that joystick and follow the jumper as they come in for landing. And then that camera that says ground camera, that's a static camera that we have mounted in the drop zone, in the jumper prep area. So throughout the day, if we have that camera turned on, people can watch us get ready and see what it takes to get us all set up. But you can see in the top left picture how elaborate we've gotten. We now have 2 monitor screens that we put up by the windows there that give us whatever data that we want to see. Sometimes it's APRS, sometimes it's weather. And Michael's also tracking APRS data off of his radio, and that's why we have all those other antennas going, so we can collect some of the antenna. James down here, KK6WVI, man, he's been a great help, and so has Greg over here, KK6STT. We call him Captain Video. They're part of the whole video streaming team, and it takes them probably close to 2.5 hours to set all that stuff up for each mission. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Now, these are the things that we're trying to streamline in the future, but it's thousands of dollars. There's obviously monitors that can incorporate these point of views within one monitor, but you know, we don't have any nice corporate sponsors, and so the only money that comes out of the people that you know, bring their talents and wish to you know, throw out money to help the team. And so far, this is what we have, and that's what we're going to stick with until something rolls our way. Speaking of weather, Mikey NE6RD, one of our original ground crew, he just loves building things in his little apartment. And we knew right away we wanted to have our own weather station. Now the drop zone has one, but it's not in view all the time. We'd have to run over to another part of the drop zone, get the weather, come back, and it turned out to be a pain. So this is literally a weather box, or a weather station in a box. You can see up here in the top left that you have a board, and then the information that comes to this weather box via this little weather vane that's in the top right picture, where my cursor is, that is transmitted over to our drop zone with that HT on 145.53. And then down here in the bottom left, you can see what kind of data comes up on a screen. It gives us our speed, gusts, and wind direction. And that turned out to be beneficial. Why we haven't put this weather station in something more professional? Works. We only use it like for 12 hours, 4 times a year. So we really never needed to make it all pretty. That's the dirty on that one. As you can see in the right picture again, there's this little camcorder there. That's that LZ camera point of view I showed you earlier. We transmit that signal on cable TV 59, 443.25 over to the hangar area. And we can also stream that video from that camera. Here's NE6RD himself. Originally, he put together our Echolink node, and we've been able to do some Echolink contacts for people far away. He also put together this APRS iGate. So for our APRS tracking, we have this. Now, we don't use the normal 4439. We use 433. And the reason we do that is for 2 reasons. One, we beacon about every 15 seconds. Secondly, for the same reason, by going over to 144.33, we know that our beacons are getting through and they're not getting knocked off the air by another beacon. Echolink and All-Star node and the iGate. And Fred, I'm glad you're here because people sometimes ask, what is this, your homebrew thing? If I could throw it to you real quick and you can kind of explain using my picture right there. Uh-oh, maybe I didn't give him enough time. Fred, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. The focus was not in the window.
Great.
Yeah, that's an all-star node. So you know, on the right side, you see the board you're seeing is a Raspberry Pi. On top, there is a Baofeng radio that is completely been like removed all the casing and everything. And I have solder, you know, directly on the Baofeng to get the audio and the COS and the PTT as well. And on the left side, it's a USB card is what they call a URI. It's a sound card. That's pretty much it.
Very good. And if I remember the story correctly, Fred, on the Echolink All-Star here, that radio in the middle that you gutted, I think you were saying it couldn't put up with the duty time. You're making a new one, huh?
Yes, I had a problem with that radio at some point. So one of the problem with those Baofeng is they were supposed to work on 1 watt and 5 watts, but apparently that doesn't work. They always transmit in 5 watts, even if you select 1 watt. And so we had one of the mission was pretty successful. So we had a lot of people talking on that radio, and that kind of and also it was 95 degrees that day. It was pretty hot inside. That's why I had to open that box because it was running very, very hot, and at some point the output of the radio kind of fried.
Okay. This is the kind of cool stuff that I've been so impressed about, folks, with our club, is that, you know, we never ask anybody to spend money on anything, but we find out that as people get interested in the club, they each come with their own talent. Trackers, and we're looking really forward to all the that. I guess it's that old saying, you know, if you throw someone a bone, and they may go for it, you know, or if you build it, they will come. Use whatever analogy you want. So I love it. When people have a reason to contribute, then they go, oh, okay, now I got it. I'll do this. So it's been a pleasure. All right. I mentioned earlier that our comms would either talk to the skydiver or our parachute control. So since we work on a simplex frequency, not everybody can hear us from the ground. So what we do is we have volunteers that go up to Mount Diablo, which is Contra Costa County. It's almost the middle of the bay, but on the east side. And it's, as you can see there, it's 3,849 feet. So they turn into a human repeater, basically, on that simplex. Control turns into the moderator for the day. It's kind of like, once again, using the NASA mission as an analogy. If you ever watch NASA TV, or if you remember watching a broadcasted NASA launch, whether it be a shuttle or whatever, they always have these narrators that kind of answer questions. They kind of tell you what's coming up, what's happening, what you can expect. And so it actually turns into a show. And that's kind of like what our missions are that day. Is we only get in 4 jumps, but in between time, there's a lot of dead air. So our net control kind of keeps things moving and answer questions. And it also keeps the frequency occupied. So no one jumps in and starts, I don't know, some kind of weird event, perhaps. I don't know. But it's hard to see in this picture, but the top left, that's Tom over there with the reason. This guy just took the whole like a mini field day. He got some new equipment. He set up his truck so he can do fast deployment. And he drives all the way up there, and he turns in to be the voice of Parachute Mobile on our mission days. That's really nice having him out there. So Michael Wright, the gentleman who you saw in the earlier pictures that's been running our streaming video, he has a knack for putting these little schematics together. So on paper, if everything is running, or if we're doing everything, this is what the max setup. Now you can event usually during Pacificon, and so we put in another whole little section there. if you actually go to Michael Wright's QRZ page, W6, I'm sorry, what is Michael's? Oh, there it is, K6MFW. If you look him up on QRZ, he actually has a link that will get you over to the schematic if you're interested in printing it out. But you can see that it gets kind of elaborate with, you know, what you're doing. It's a local convention, and it covers Santa Clara County, Santa Cruz, and Monterey. Anyway, there was a group in Monterey County that was sponsoring it, and this is at the old Fort Ord location. And they happened to have a drop zone in Monterey over at the Marina Airport. So we asked, and the people there said, sure, you can bring your event down here for that day. So this is actually very earlier in the missions, though, and we really didn't have much to display on the table. Ray here, W6RAR, was literally taking 3x5 cards where we have 2 monitors up. At one time, I think we had 3. The APRS right here, and people can do their QSOs right from the hallway if they want to talk to a skydiver during the event. And it always turns out to be a head turner as people are walking down the hallway there, and they go, what? I can talk to a skydiver right now? And they can watch it on the TV or on the monitor. And it makes for a great eye catcher there, and promotes ham radio in a live action kind of sense. Our payload typically consists of 3 systems: radio system, APRS, video, and who knows what the future will have. We might do other things that we can attach on there. Now keep in mind that we only have like a 2x2.5 on the chest, and then sometimes we're even putting things on our legs, as we'll show you. The radio system consists of some of this. Have our own little system that we like to use, but some of the components are the same. So for our FM communication, our 2-meter simplex, we've always been using these Kenwood THF6. They're no longer in production, but man, those are great radios. They're tri-band, very, very wideband receive. But the main reason we like this radio, because back then it was one of the only radios that had true dual band receive. So when you're on one band, you can actually hear the subband simultaneously, which was important to us because while the jumper is handling QSOs and they're really fast, you just say a call sign and a name, and then you go on to the next one, because we want to try to get as many contacts as we can within our hang time. So it was difficult. We found relay messages to the jumper if we needed to. So by using an alternate frequency, we can then use that frequency, say something to the jumper like, hey, winds have increased to this, or you need to come back to the west. We can say that, the jumper will hear that message, and it won't interrupt the whole QSO cycle. We found out that you have to put a windsock on that microphone. You can see where my cursor is there, because it is windy and it sounds like you're a wind tunnel. You can also see in this setup, Mark is using an earpiece that goes in his ear. Now, I'm a motorcyclist, and we've been using these little Bluetooth intercom antenna that they actually have a Bluetooth push-to-talk adapter. And I was able to use that adapter, plug it into the radio, and with a nice noise condenser canceling mic in the helmet, people don't even know I'm in the air. All I got to do is push that button and I'm talking. And so I don't have to worry about the cords and the mic. Plus, I have a full face helmet, so it makes it difficult if I had the microphone. Instead of the rubber ducky, I use a folding J-pole antenna. I have that in a pouch, and I have that attached to my ankle, my left ankle. So once I deploy and open my parachute right away, I then deploy this antenna below me. For our HF jumps, we have a whole different radio setup. We've been using the FT817 for QRP. And hey, Fred, I think that's the one you made for us. That's a homebrew 20-meter offset end-fed. And you can see what we do is that's 40-something feet, if I remember correctly. I wrap it and put little 2 paper tags around it. It reminds really well other deployments we've had in the past. Now, as you can see here in the bottom right, we have a recording station. Now, you have to keep in mind that normally when you're sitting behind a microphone making QSOs, you can get a paper pad and write down those QSOs. Well, our jumper is not really able to do too much of that. The camera has caught me on several occasions writing on my palm of my hand, but pretty soon that fills up. So what we do is we just use another radio that we have. All it needs to do is receive that frequency, and we just record that into a digital recorder. So later on, we can now go through the log and see level. And this audio is being picked up at altitude starting at about 12,000 feet. So we can hear everything when we're in the air. Nowadays, we also remind all the people that participate to email us at skydivinghams@gmail.com and tell us that they made a contact and the time. And that way we can get that into the log as well. APRS, everybody's familiar with APRS these days for the most part. Great tracking and data pieces of equipment that hams have for many years. Well, we incorporated this from the get-go. We were using these Argent Data Tracker 2s. They're no longer in production. They haven't been in production for quite a while. But what was nice is we worked with Argent Data and they hooked us up with this little daughter board that allowed us to put on this SpO2 monitor or pulse ox monitor. You can see that here where my cursor is in the bottom right. You've probably seen this device when you go in for a medical checkup or in a hospital. What that does is allows data, the heart rate and the oxygen contact in the blood to be displayed when you key on that icon .fi or whatever your favorite APRS tracking software is. Why was that important? Well, way back in the beginning, when we're at high altitudes, we wanted to kind of monitor the jumpers' oxygen levels. Well, since we never did that, it's not too critically important that we have it, but it turned out to be a great conversational piece when people say, hey, why is your heart rate 120? And I go, well, you try jumping out of a plane, and then they get the idea. Over here on the left is another APRS tracking that we've been experimenting with. That's kind of all self-contained. As you can see in the older Argent Data, there's the good old hockey puck, and we had to mount that on the back of the skydiver, right about midline below the neck, where there was an area to just Velcro it. Whereas this one here, those Sansonic little well. Now it runs at like 500 milliamps or milliwatts, sorry. So sometimes we don't get a nice signal as the Argent Datas had because they were running a little hotter. I think they're actually running about 4 or 5. But these now are getting really old, and I know Fred's got a few of those in his possession, and he's volunteered to hook us up with some new toys maybe for next year that will allow us some more fun with APRS since this stuff is getting old. As you're all familiar, if you go onto aprs.fi, you've seen these patterns, but usually they're just cars following a roadway. So most people see this and go, well, that's different. You can see on this particular screenshot, I clicked on the icon, and you can see in this case, KC6TYD. And okay, at that time, you can see the heart rate 0, SpO2 is 0, so it wasn't actually tracking that data. But this, you can click this and you can kind of follow where the skydiver is during each particular jump. Now, these long stretches is actually the ascent up into the air, and then the smaller corkscrew looking pattern is during the descent. Sometimes we actually are fortunate to get the ascent. Sometimes we're not, because when you're inside here's a particular mission, mission 32, and you can see that the ascent was lots and lots of orbits to get to altitude. And then you can see here where this was actually Mark's jump, and he finally exited, and you can see he actually got a little far east. We actually had to get on that alternate frequency and tell him to get his butt back over the drop zone. And of course, the reason there are so many is this particular jump, we went to 15,000 feet on that one. Typically, we're only going to 13. So they gave us a little higher altitude on that jump. And we got a lot of hang time too on that one. So APRS data can be superimposed over Google Earth using what's known as KML files. I have no way to explain what that is. Maybe some of you are technical savvy enough to figure that out, but I always have someone put these up for me that volunteered. You basically take the data and you can crunch it, and it makes a file and gives you a 3D kind of look at where these objects are in relation to Google Maps. And so you can see here, the plane icon is the when we're still in the plane. And then the pins here are once the skydiver has deployed, and it kind of gives you this representation. Here is another view. This is a perfect view where you can see this nice little kind of descent, and then a angle here. Then there's a corkscrew going down over the drop zone. And then here's a lateral view. Now, if you actually calculate this out, people ask, well, how much of a hang time do you have? You can see right here, this is what, 1331. And then the pinpoint down here is like 1343. So it comes roughly out to about anywhere from 12 to 16 minutes or so. We get it, we're in the air. And the actual QSO time is going to be a little bit shorter than that, because myself and Mark start wrapping things up at about 3,000 feet. So we end our QSOs at about 3,000. And typically anything below that, we start losing a lot of the DX anyway, because now our angle is now greatly diminished. We don't have the altitude. But we got to get ready to land, so we got to hang it up. So roughly about 10 minutes is all our QSO times. So that's why our exchanges are pretty quick. And it's not uncommon for us on a busy day, especially the first mission or the first jump of the mission. We've gotten in 30 QSOs, 30 plus. Typically that particular jump initially starts off with a lot of pileups. So we've got to filter through the pileups as well. It gets tricky, but fun nonetheless. Let's take a look at this KML file. I made a little animation, and you can kind of see how it works. Hopefully you guys you should see this. All right, so you can see, you can kind of, when you go onto Google Earth, you'll have the little control gimbal, you might say. You can turn it around, spin it around like this, and you can kind of get any view you want based on that KML file you used. kind of cool. Going back to that first shot, you'll notice that these pins are missing a lot of data. You'll see that there's a lot of holes in the red. And the reason that is because the rubber duck broke on the APRS transmitter. So basically, you know, if you're not getting all the data, you're going to have holes in the data. So we had to replace that antenna. Let's switch gears and we'll go over to video streaming now. Our very first time doing video streaming, we had this monstrosity of a box. This was, we borrowed this from the Mount Diablo Amateur Radio Club. They have an ATV group and they let us borrow this. This is on 1.2 gig. And this gentleman right here on the left is a friend of Mark's. He comes from Canada. He is a really well-known or very good skydiver, but he's also a rigger. He's a certified rigger. He can work on parachutes and do repairs and that kind of stuff. And he's also a really good photographer. So he originally joined us to do some aerial photography for us. Anyway, we elected to throw this transmitter on him. You can see there's a pouch here, and we put the transmitter behind that pouch. And then there was a small lead acid battery to power it up. Now on his head, you'll see the normal camera, but right next to it, you'll see that cylindrical kind of little lens there, and that's the actual ATV camera. Now, it's hard to see in this photo, but follow the coax here. It goes up to his head, and you can see here using gaffer's tape, there was a metal disc with a spike antenna around the top of his head, and that was the antenna to get the video out. Now, unfortunately, we didn't have the opportunity to record this, but from all the audio that came back from viewers said that the signal was absolutely terrific. For the very first time doing this, everybody was pleased, and that was good because we were experimenting. We weren't sure what was going to happen. So, of course, the bar is set. So all the rest of the missions, we've now offered streaming video. Michael first started using, we had to give that equipment back to the own. So we have this transmitter here. He made a 3D kind of printing tie down. We picked up a little project camera, and we started streaming from his head there. And this is a patch antenna over here that we were receiving using 2.4 gigahertz, but it really wasn't working. You'll see in this video here, this is Michael at high altitude. You can see that it's super, super grainy. But you know what, folks, when you're experimenting, you're very, very excited no matter what. We were just happy that we had a signal, and we knew that, okay, we'll improve from here. But as you can see, as he gets lower and lower, the signal gets clearer and clearer. So we are able to figure out that, okay, number one, power is, we need more power. And number two is antenna placement. And so that was on the agenda, but let's walk to live vicariously. You can skydive with us. And as you can see, once again, the picture is definitely improved as we've come down with a few little snowy, grainy spots there. And we're on the ground. I think winds were a little high because he's not really supposed to land on the shoulder of the road there, but he got caught a little east. All right, so to help improve the signal, we moved the antenna, say the transmitter and antenna. It was our understanding or our reason to believe that having it on the head, the body absorbed a lot of the signal. And we found out that having it attached to the ankle was a lot better. So for many, many missions, it wasn't uncommon that the jumper prep people would take a roll of gaffer's tape, as you can see Michael having his hand right there on the right. We would either throw that on his shoe and totally just lash it down, or he found, he'd make like a little holster or a pouch, And we did that for a few years, and it was a lot better. Down here on the bottom is the transceiver we had for 5.8, and or I should say transmitter. And you can see also that we changed antenna types. We went from a rubber ducky to a circularized polarized antenna, both the one on the left and also the one on the bottom right. Those are the famous egg beaters, and what that helped with was all the different phases. As we moved around in the sky, you wouldn't get so much grainy patterns. That right there also is a 2-watt 5.8 transmitter. So having that 2 watts versus the little 1 watt maybe or 0.5 gave us a little bit more bite or oomph, and it worked out quite well. We also changed over to a GoPro camera for 2 reasons. We finally got some interface that was more plug and play friendly, and it also allowed us to throw in an SD card and get raw video as well. Within the, if some of you are into drones, as I'll explain later, the drone industry is using these transmitters big time, and we are basically dry when you get right down to it. Okay, so this is Troy. I introduced him earlier. He did this mission, mission 26. So just to give you some past and now present, how we improved, we switched over to this new receiver. This is a diversity receiver. It has omnidirectional. That's the circularized polarized right there. And then we also put on more of a cone shape high gain. So it decides which signal and then sends that out over streaming video. So let's take a look at this. Now, once again, boom, this video is coming while he's in the plane. And we were actually really super impressed. There is some graininess because we would expect that. But the fact that we were actually getting this type of signal was very rewarding. Now, Troy is also a motorcyclist, and he's using that Bluetooth setup that I use. So you'll see him momentarily. It might be out of view, but you'll see him take his hand and press a button right along his stomach area. All right, he is about ready to jump out, folks, and there he goes. Out come his parachute because we deploy it right away. There's not really much of a free fall for this because we want to keep the altitude. He's going to correct his heading here, make sure we're above the drop zone. Sorry, I don't have any audio on this one. So look at that picture. That we were really happy to get that kind of resolution based on, 2-watt transmitter coming from a skydiver about 2 miles above us, a little less than 2. I threw this in, folks, because if you're really into audio AV stuff, these cheapy, off-the-shelf mono plugs or RCA cables, oh, we found out right away they are just worthless. We actually went to a cable company and they cables, and these are nice flexible Belden grade cables, both for audio and video. They're not as bulky, and what a difference it also made in not only setup, but video quality. Okay, I mentioned earlier that the reason we go to the GoPro is because we're able to get raw footage, hence the video off the SD card of the camera. So the title of my presentation is Past, Present, Future. So here's a future. Someday we want our video to be high tech or quality enough to be like the raw video. So what I'm going to do is run this video, and this will also give you an idea before we start our QSOs. There's a few little things we've got to do before we actually start that process. And so there's little titles that will come up. Watch for those on the screen. The only thing I want to preface with is because we're pulling our parachute or opening our parachute right away, we're coming out of the plane last because we're not experiencing any free fall. Typically in sports skydiving, we have about 50 to 60 seconds of free fall, but we don't want anybody coming down on us. So we're going to go out last. So you'll see I'm in the back of the plane. All right, let's get going here. So what I'll do here is I'll narrate for the people that might not be seeing this or they're on the radio. I've just now jumped out of the plane, and I pull the parachute cord right away to open it, and I'm going to check my heading, make sure that I stay over the drop zone and I'm not flying somewhere else. And also adjust my camera, make sure the camera that I have is working and pointed in the right direction. So there's a view about 12,000 feet, folks. You can see I just put down the antenna for the video, and now I'm deploying that little folding J-pole that I was telling you about. And I just let that stream behind me, works out really nice. So what I'll do is I'll pause it really quick there. Right after I do that, I'll typically check into our drop zone, make sure that they are good to go. They don't have any messages for me, as well as our parachute control. And then I start the QSO process. I do that for about 10 minutes or so. And what I'll do here is I'll just let you enjoy the landing here real quick. Yeah. If there are any pilots in the audience, you'll notice my pattern was similar to how a plane lands. We always do a downwind, crosswind, upwind. All right, let's talk a little about that 5.8 gigahertz frequency we've been using for streaming video. As I alluded to earlier, that the drone industry is very, very popular, and they're the ones that are making all these channels and bands and getting all these frequencies. So you'll see here as of 2017, they just incorporated 4 new channels, making it now 9 bands, 72 channels available on 5.8. Now I should state here that something that you may not be familiar with in the drone sport is that they do a lot of drone racing. Now these aren't your big typical kind of cinematic drones that you kind of see around. These are small little, and just like a racing circuit, they'll do these drone races. And so if you have like a half a dozen of these drones, you've got to have you know, a half a dozen frequencies that they're using. And so they come up with all these different frequencies. And as you can see here, there are frequency band regulations in every country. For example, with a ham license, the spectrum you are allowed to use is 5650 megahertz to 5925. And you can see up on that chart, we're using band E like Edward or Echo on channel 5, which is 5.885 gigahertz. And so we are legal on a ham band. So that's good. Now, some people may say, well, when you're transmitting, Rob, on ATV kind of video, aren't you supposed to use your call sign or display it? Dun, 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 dun. That is the poor man version of making sure people see our call sign when we're doing video. We're working on a way to do a digital overlay, but we haven't really got that to work. So Michael just throws this piece of tape on my wrist and says, Rob, every so often, make sure you put your call sign in the screen. Keep you legal. So we're legal. Let's talk about all the radio gear once again. As you can see here for Mark's setup, there's from left to right, there's the whole video and antenna, his radio, the recording station, and the APRS, the great old Bioenno battery to run it all. Here's my setup, same stuff, but I use the helmet and then that Bluetooth connection. There's that J-pole antenna I deployed. Now, I also like to have the rubber ducky when I'm ascending in the plane. And so I use a switcher box or that little switch control to switch the antenna to the rubber duck, or I'm sorry, the folding J-pole once I'm out of the plane. Here's our HF gear. Oh, folks, man, that was such a hard project to do because there's just so much involved. You both HF and we're running 2 meter, and I need to get it on the recording. So, oops, let me come back to that. There we go. So using the mixer, I'm able to mix in both the HF and the 2 meter onto the digital recorder, and it keeps it nice for the log. So how do we carry all this stuff? Back in the beginning, mission 2, you can see Mark here has this coaxial radio vest, very popular among rescuers as well as hams. It has three, I think it has 3 pockets. We put the 2 meter radio and a recording station on there. And then on his leg, he had another pouch for the APRS. But as missions started to get bigger and we added more payload, we finally, and you can see here in 2014, we went with a modified paintball vest. And that actually worked out fairly well because we didn't have to start from square one. I can have all the radios already connected for a few things. And they were ready to go. The only down part about this is the pouches were permanently attached to the vest. And so what pouch you got and what size it is what you have to deal with. I didn't like that. So later on, I went with a MOLLE vest. It's more of a tactical MOLLE vest that you would see with SWAT, Army, or whatever. And you can get individual pouches. You apply them to those little MOLLE loops wherever you want them. And you can create your palette. And you can see how much stuff we, quite a bit. What we've also had a rigger do for us is you'll see off to the side here, it's kind of hard on the very sides of each vest. There's, I call it a cummerbund because it reminds me of a cummerbund, but what it is this spandex material that stretches around to the front, and then zips up. And what it basically does is makes a papoose, I guess you can say, and keeps all that equipment once we're under canopy. This has turned out to be a really great system. I can just put this on. Our jumper prep people then make a few adjustments. They use some gaffer's tape to tape down a few wires so they don't get pulled, and off we go. This is our HF setup. Once again, I'm always surprised we've actually had so much success. This mixer has 1, 2, 3, 4 jacks on the bottom, and you can see the out jack actually has 2 outs to it, one to the recording, one to the ears, the speakers. And these are really, really easy to come loose, but it's worked. And Mark has actually made a contact to Maryland from California. It's our furthest contact on HF so far. We were really, really happy to get that. This here is my car. Too bad there's no room for you to drive it or ride in it. No, it's not my car. But this illustration is to show you that not only have we experimented or used all those radio vests, but we've also hauled other things in other experiments in the past. Way back in 2010, we put together this PSK-31 beacon. We found this box that fitted almost like it was made for it. We lashed it to the radio. You can see here in the bottom right picture, you can barely see the ballon for a 20-meter long wire, and it's hooked right to the ballon with that little lug spade connector. Unfortunately, I believe that spade connector came loose, and the test didn't really work, but it was fun doing the experiment nonetheless. Did we come back to this? No, but unofficially, I did my own version of this using Whisper. I took this Whisper up, used the 20-meter long wire, and I got reports on the tracker from New York and Eastern Canada and various other places, but I think that was the furthest. So that was a fun experiment to do, and I haven't done it again, but I do want to go back up and try it again. Mark is a big collector of World War II items, and he really wanted to give this a shot. Folks, this is a BC-611. It's pretty much, you know, the first walkie-talkie during, at least during World War II. It's 3.5 to 6 megahertz AM, works on a vacuum tube dry battery at 27 milliwatts. So we had to get creative on this jump. We put a lanyard to it, and he actually, you can see in the left picture, he had to take his helmet off and make sure he, you know, attached his helmet so he didn't lose that. And I understand he made one contact on that call. Of course, you know, it was a scheduled event, and so people were listening, but it wasn't as successful as we thought, but it was fun to just kind of go through the motions using that. We also have taken great pictures from the air. I mentioned that Jim was our photographer, and so we have kind of an archive of some good pictures we've taken. I love this bottom one, this bottom left. You can see Jim coming in over the canopy, and his shadow on his canopy there is, I love that shot. Some great shots from the ground. And Steve, one of our ground crew, took this picture late in the afternoon of me coming in for landing and got this beautiful silhouette. I still have that on my my phone desktop page or background page. I just love that picture. And of course, I keep mentioning about our ground crew, folks. You know what? There's only 2 of us jumping, but we have up to 10 volunteers, ground crew, helping us. And during Pacificon, we actually run from 3 sites. I have maybe 8 people at the drop zone. We have 2 up on the hill and another 4 in San Ramon. It takes a lot of effort to coordinate all that, get everybody on the same page. So more 75%, if not 90% of the manpower is actually coming from the support and talents of our ground crew to make these missions happen. You don't have to be a skydiver to be involved in Parachute Mobile. Here's mission 31. So this was some feedback. We always read our emails. I really like this top one up here. I was fishing up at Party Lake near Valley Springs in Jackson. I tuned into 146.43, and to my total amazement, you heard me when I gave. I'm relatively a new ham, and yours would be my first QSL card. Thanks so much for what you're doing, combining skydiving and ham radio. I like to go down to this one here, a second from the bottom. I got my ticket 2 days ago, and you were my first contact. Pretty easy too, since all I had to say was my call sign, or not much, but he was referring to his call sign, and that was in Lincoln. Folks, if you're not familiar with the Central Valley area, Lincoln is actually a good stretch from us. That was actually a good contact because that's all the way up by above Sacramento and then to the west from where we were. So I like that one. This was mission 32. Now ARRL has a ARRL Kids Day every June, I think it is. And there was a ham radio group out of Lodi area. And this is actually the city of Galt Library, which is in the same area. And they happened to be having a Kids Day there. And lo and behold, when they found out that we were having our mission, they got on their laptop, brought up the video, and these kids had the biggest smiles on their face, I'm told. They were watching me live, and I was doing QSOs and talking to them at the library, and it just made their days. So I'm so glad that this hobby is, you know, making people maybe interested to get into this hobby. I just love it. They all got QSL cards too. Speaking of QSL cards, if you make a contact during one of our missions, you get a one-of-a-kind QSL card. We take a picture of that day, and that's what goes on the card. So what's next for Parachute Mobile? Who knows? It's our volunteers, what we can come up with and ideas to make it happen. So when is our next mission? Well, hopefully April or sooner. We got, as I stated earlier, we kind of got scrubbed on this one because we've been trying to dodge the virus. But we hope we'll start in April again and get 4 missions going for next year. So let me stop share here real quick. And thank you, folks. If you have any questions, hopefully that was informative and exciting to watch and gave a new twist on ham radio.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ron. Let's take any questions from the repeater first. I'm going to go ahead and unmute the repeater. And actually, I think Pete, let me see. I had to mute the repeater earlier. However, I don't think I can unmute it. I think that has to be done at the repeater site. *6, I think. So while we're waiting, and by the way, you are listening to the Portland Amateur Radio Club monthly meeting, and we have Rob Fenn with Parachute Mobile that just gave our presentation. So does anybody have any questions on Zoom?
I'll answer a couple of questions I saw in the chat now.
Yeah.
I see that John Rowland said, pretty rough dropout. What altitude are these hey-ho jumps? Well, we're not technically doing the hey-ho jump. We kind of put that aside, but our typical jump altitude is 13,500-ish, 13,500. That's what most of all jump runs are. We do get an opportunity to go to 15, and then every once in a while we'll go to 18. There was questions of the hey-ho jump would be, yes, that is correct. It's really high. Then there was the talk about oxygen. On the hey-ho jumps, yes, we would need oxygen, but typically on our 13,000 foot jumps, no oxygen needed. But when we do our 18,000 foot jumps, we put oxygen on at 15,000 for the rest of the way to help deal with any kind of hypoxia that might set in. And I've got videos of what skydivers look like with hypoxia. If we have time, I can throw that up, but you just turn into, you're like you're drunk up there. You have no coordination, and they still drop out. And then when they come down to lower atmospheres, they're back to awake and alert. I don't know why they do that, but it's crazy.
Cool. It looks like we got the repeater unmuted now. So anybody that's on the repeater that wishes to ask a question of Rob, just throw out your call sign. Cool. We haven't heard anything. And if anybody does have a question on the repeater, go ahead and throw out your call sign at any time. So I see Dan has
have another comment here.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll throw something in here real quick while there's people are waiting to chime in. I'm imagining the majority of this group is in the Portland area. Is that correct? That are in attendance right now?
Yes.
Okay, so if you want to just head south on 205 in the city of Molalla, there's a skydiving drop zone out there, folks. So if I've inspired you, head out there, get a tandem jump, and who knows? There is a tandem jumper or a ham radio operator that checks in with us once in a while. He doesn't skydive, but he does do a tandem jump, and they've allowed him to take his HT and do a couple contacts.
Oh, that's awesome. So
Fred, was there anything I missed? Do you have any anything else to add?
No, I don't think you missed anything. You drop a few times during the presentation. I don't know if that was me or if that was you, but beside that, everything was okay.
All right, good.
Rob, about how many contacts do you make during a descent?
Yeah, so on a busy, it's always the first jump of the day. We have a lot of pileups. It's like a DX, but it's on FM, so it's even worse. But we can have as many as 30. I think I've had 30 or 31 in that short 10-minute section. But typically, the rest of the day, it dwindles down. Everybody's got their QSO in, and it kind of averages out maybe 25.
Oh, very nice. And how do you juggle back and forth between HF and VHF?
Each jump is designated as an HF jump or a 2-meter jump. Typically, since there's so much involved in the HF, we just do one HF jump per mission because our listening audience is primarily 2-meter, and we don't want a lot of downtime where they're not getting involved. So what we usually FM jump like on 2-meter, and then we schedule the HF jump around noon or 1 o'clock, and then we end the day off with two more. At one time, we were going to actually. At one time we were actually going to kind of conduct 2 jumps at the same time, but for safety and coordination, it wasn't working out.
Yeah, it looks like you have to have a lot of ground crew support or even just one jumper. Some of the pictures that you showed there look like a typical field day setup, which usually takes many people and many hours.
Yeah, it's a big setup, but you know what? When some of our regulars that have been doing this throughout the years, we just show up and the setup duties now are familiar, and they go, okay, I'll take care of that project, and I'll take care of this project, and it's gotten faster.
Anybody else with questions for John? I mean, Rob, excuse me. And Pete, if you did have a question, we didn't hear it.
I have a question. Is anybody crazy enough to do CW during an HF jump?
I'll answer that question in two ways. I think it can be done, and they'd probably be crazy enough to do it. But unfortunately, I don't think between the four of us we know CW. So, but I'm sure that probably would be a great. That could be doable because I could probably just make like a mount on the vest and just kind of tap against my stomach area, you know, just and yeah,
Sure.
I think that's totally doable.
Yeah, or just use a memory, you know, key or button. So it would just be one button press. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
And then since I have the recording, I can record that. I learn CW.
Yeah. Okay. I'm teaching a class. I know.
Looks like there's been a lot of innovation with the different equipment and the configuration of the equipment. That looks like a lot of fun to kind of come up with what you want to do, give it a try first, and then redo it in a better way.
Yeah, that the before and after part, a lot of stuff, you know, starts out very prototypish, you might say. And as things get better and we figure out, okay, this is the direction we need to go, then we just keep building on that and make more and more improvements. And we're trying to make things more, a little bit more solid state and more plug and play, because, you know, back in the beginning, a lot of the components were seriously just put together with tape and shoved in a bag and go, all right, go jump it and see if it works. It was crazy.
Are there any other
I think
groups?
to this day, oh, let me answer that. But to this day, out in the drop zone, I don't think anybody's found it. I think there's a speaker mic and a lead acid battery that we've never been able to find that we've actually dropped during a jump. But anyway, yeah, just recently there's a gentleman. Oh, I forgot what state he's in. Somewhere back east. There is a gentleman doing parachute mobile. It's more just, it's not quite as many accessories. It's just an HT, so it doesn't have to have all the bells and whistles and doesn't need the ground crew that we have. And this year we were going to try to do establish some kind of scheduled QSO to do probably a never done before parachute to parachute. Who knows? Maybe we can get that to happen. So, but with COVID, we haven't been in contact, but there is someone else doing it.
We have.
That's great. Yeah, I think I don't know if they're trying to call in again. Pete, are you trying to call into the Zoom meeting again? You may need to unmute whatever it is you called in on.
No. Oh, I guess we're on a speaker phone here on the.
There you go.
On the landline.
Yeah.
My question for Rob was, how many years have you been doing this, or the group that you joined? How long?
When did I get my license? It was 2014, just before 2014, I think. But I've been with the crew now for, this is our 11th year. And so I think I've been doing this, 9 years though? So I didn't get it for like 2 years into the project. So somewhere around 9 years I've been jumping now.
Thank you.
John Rollins, you had another question out there. Let me, on the chat, you were talking about the AB license thing. So let me just reiterate there, as when you take an AFF course, which is advanced freefall class, they do 1 day of ground, and then then there's like 7 modules with an instructor to learn how to skydive. And so you don't necessarily, it was a waste of money, because that would just be one more jump you'd be putting money in. It's a very expensive sport, just like scuba diving and other things are like that. So your very first jump, you're going to be with 2 instructors that got you, but you're technically not attached to them. And anyway, you go through 7 modules, and then after those 7 jumps, if they deem that you're a safe skydiver, you can go solo. And then when you get to jump number 10, no, it's 25. When you get to jump 25, you do a check dive and a written, and you get your A license. And that just shows proficiency, that's all. And you still got more training to do. There's a lot of disciplines you can train for. And then each time you get more jumps, you can get more license privileges. And it goes B, C, and D. For this particular activity, you really need a B license and above, because a B license gives you the ability to wear all the gear. Without a B license, they're not going to let you take that up. It's a distraction. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was looking at, because I knew that they have, what is it, like a 200 jump requirement before you start wearing cameras?
Yep, 200 jumps and more for cameras. So I talked to our DZO, our drop zone guy, and he says, yeah, I know you want to get up there, Rob, and do that with your other guys, but let's wait till we get to 200. So
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I did. It was my incentive.
Yeah, I got through AFF. I've got like 15 or 17 jumps, I think. And I just, of all the things, I ended up getting a sprained ankle walking around at the DZ between jumps. And so I was out for the rest of that year. And then I didn't have enough money last year. And this year, the COVID thing's kind of throwing everything off. So I'm hoping to get back soon.
Okay. Well, all you would need to do is take a reoccurrence, which isn't the whole thing. And then maybe get back into it. So cool. You can start a parachute mobile up in Portland area.
That'd be a blast. I'll have to work on that.